Hey guys, me Tarke Cat, and I've whipped out the old Path of Exile tea for a special video. Before I begin, I love grinding A games, I love Path of Exile, but there are a few flaws that I need to point out. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a old school PoE streamer, and I'm now starting a YouTube, which is mostly covering WoW content, right? But my basis as a community guy started in PoE. When the game was back in beta, I did a lot of a thing called community build making. This is very early on when the top guys were kind of like Crip on the YouTube, and then people like Ziggy were just sort of starting out on the YouTube, right? So you had Crip on Twitch and Ziggy on YouTube, and that was kind of it, and a few other people here and there. And basically, what I was doing was I would go on the forums, people would say, I want a fireball build, I would sit and I'd make them a fireball build, and that's all I did. I started just on the forums, and I went and just did it on Twitch, and I just streamed build making. So, that's out of the way. Why am I mentioning it? Path of Exile has some core issues which I want to address. So, as established, I played a lot of the game at the start, and I did a lot of build making at the start, and that's what I loved about the game. I loved build making, and that's why I did community stuff. Now, I can't go back to Path of Exile and play it for more than a week or two at the time. And I call this Diablo syndrome. The reason why I call this Diablo syndrome is that if you look at the D3 community, pretty much all of the D3 streamers which aren't like the 24/7 D3 streamers, they have this exact same issue, right? New season comes out, they play for a week, then they disappear. People log on the PTR, they play the new stuff, they disappear, and that's that. Path of Exile is a very similar problem, but I feel like Path of Exile struggles more than Diablo because it's harder to have that retention level. And what I mean by that is when Diablo makes something new, so they make new sets, new this, new that, whatever, you can very quickly get to end game and you can try the new stuff quick, right? In PoE, they make these amazing new leagues, they add loads of new end game content, and you need to invest a lot before you can get to that point. Most of the hardcore guys, they play hardcore. A lot of the old school PoE guys are the hardcore crowd, right? They loved pushing the 3 month races. What I loved about the game was making builds for people, and I used to race, and I used to try and get into the top 100 as best I could. Did it a few times back in Nemesis and stuff like that, but that was what I was into. I was into like really just pushing and playing like 15, 16, 17, 18 hours a day. I can't do that anymore with the game, and I know that I'm not the only person who feels like that, and that's why I'm making this video. So, how can I think grinding games could fix this problem, or make Path Exile more appealing to older players who haven't come back to the game? Make the early leveling phase more interesting, rework it. Think of it like Cataclysm in World of Warcraft. They scrapped all the old stuff and made it all new. A lot of people kind of miss those old zones, but it made it interesting people going back. People still go back now and level new characters, and it's fresh. The issue I currently have with the game, and this isn't just a PoE thing, this is an ARPG thing in general. I don't think anyone's really captured it perfectly. No one in the market has fixed this problem yet. But the issue I have is I read the patch notes, I get really excited. I still follow the game quite closely. I still follow all the top YouTube channels, State of Exile, all that stuff, and I'm always following and reading notes. Sorry, my cat's running around, sorry for the jingles. And then I get really excited, I make a build, I then scrap the build, I go on Reddit, I look at builds, I scrap the builds, and you kind of get it. And I finally fine-tune this thing. I'm like, oh, this is going to be really, really cool. I then get into the game, I kill Hillock, kill Mervel. I was like, okay, cool. And then I go through Cruel, and then I kill Hillock, and then I kill Mervel, and I go through again. And especially with these new leagues, where Tempest is a very good example of this, Tempest was pretty dull unless you were a mapper. The issue you're having is you're getting people like me who love the game, who've played this game a lot. I have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours on this game. I can't go back to it anymore because I'm tired of Act 1, I'm tired of Act 2. I can push myself through it once or twice, but we're getting to that third hit time. Then you have the fact that a lot of these really interesting builds and what makes the game interesting, they don't come into effect till about level 70, level 80. So this is like my standard PoE session. I'll spend a week to 2 weeks min-maxing and theory crafting. I make my build. This is the most fun I'll ever have in the game. I make my character. I take it somewhat casually, grind it out, and then within a few days, I'm sort of at endgame. I then get my character, get my currency, do this, do that, do that. My build now works, and within about 4 or 5 hours of endgame mapping, I get bored, and then I leave. Now, I know I'm not the only person who feels this way. I know a lot of my old viewers feel this way because they're always talking to me about it, and I know a lot of my friends who've played the game feel this way. Coming back to PoE once you've been burnt, and this is a burnout issue, right? Once you've been burnt out, it's very hard to get back into it. This is also a big issue for new players coming to the game because, as we all know, PoE is a very complex game. That's what all of us love about it. But the early game is pretty dull, right? You wake up, you get cleave, you cleave a few things, you then get spectral throw or whatever, and it takes a really long time to build up and become fun. The reason why this system sort of works in Diablo, and even in Diablo people are complaining about this, right, is that at least with Diablo you're very, very rapidly getting skills. You're very rapidly getting interesting and fun uniques which change the way you play. And even though the shelf life of D3 isn't that long, right? New patch comes out, you play it for a week, you maybe make a new character, then you quit. You get a satisfying experience from start to finish. And something like adventure mode, even though I'm not the biggest fan of adventure mode because it killed the campaign, basically what adventure mode is rifts and missions. Think of it like Masters missions that you can spam non-stop for quick experience. I don't necessarily think that grinding gear should go that way, but if they at least opened the discussion with the community and said, guys, what would you do to have alternate leveling paths? What could you do to make it a bit more interesting? One thing which I would personally really love would be racing. PoE racing, we all know what that is. But if we had races which started at endgame, or started with you make a pre-selected character, you have 60 points, you can think of it like Descent, you kind of get like this opening chest, and I think that'd be really fun. It doesn't need to be like a very long league, because obviously you cut a lot of that early session off. But I think having 1 week races where you can kind of start with a pre-built character to some extent would just be a really fun way of making the game feel fun again. Or at least a bit more accessible to players who are new to the game, because what happens at the moment is a new season comes out, I'll leap back into it, I drag in a few of my old viewers back into it, and I've still got a few friends who I've always wanted to play Path of Exile, but they just can't get into it. At least if I knew there was one of these events coming up, I could bring them in with that and they could test out the game. With Diablo, I don't have this issue. I can always bring in my old friends to Diablo because while it's overwhelming at first, it's very accessible. Why are games like Hearthstone so popular? They're accessible from the very beginning. The play style from your first game to your last game in Hearthstone, yeah, you may not have all the really cool cards and stuff, but you get a good sense of the game. The core issue with Path of Exile at the moment is when you first log in and your first 30 minutes of gameplay, you don't get the core sense. I'm going to start wrapping up this video, but the reason why I really stress this point, and the reason why I'm making this video, just to begin with, there's a YouTuber I follow called The Lazy Peon. He recently just made a first impressions video for Path of Exile. He's mostly a WoW guy. The reason why I'm talking about him is he made this video, he played for a few hours, and I'm watching it, and I'm sat and I'm like, oh, this is so painful, because everything that he's complaining about, everything that I know he's not enjoying, is because he hasn't got to experience it yet. Now, I could go, oh, what a noob, right? He hasn't got like 10,000 hours logs in Path of Exile like I do. But that's not his fault. It's not his fault that he hasn't spent weeks researching builds and grinding, right? And you have this with a lot of other players. And at the very least, imagine if instead of a new challenge mode after the next 1 month, Grinding Gear announced, we're just going to try a crazy new leveling system. Just come join. It would be a fun way of getting a lot of the old guys back. Again, you look at the old school streamers, Again, I'm not putting myself on the same level as anyone. I was a very niche community guy. But someone like Crip, why isn't Crip playing Path of Exile? He got burnt out. He always goes on about how much he loves the game. He comes back every now and again and he enjoys it, but he gets bored, right? Make the beginning fun again. Let us just go wild with crazy builds. Again, the current system punishes build designers, because if I make some crazy wacky build, which is only effective once I've got 100 points on a passive tree and 30 exalts worth of items, getting to that point isn't very enjoyable. Getting to that point isn't very fun. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. I'll probably throw this up on Reddit. Tell me what you think. What would you guys do? Is this a real issue, or is this just me being butthurt because I can't play a game as much as I'd love to? Anyway, I'm Tarke Cat. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, then please subscribe for more similar content. Again, I'm mostly covering WoW stuff at the moment. We've got BlizzCon coming up in 2 weeks. I'll also be covering a lot of Diablo stuff. And I'll make the odd Path of Exile video whenever I'm feeling in love with the game again. Again, thank you, and bye-bye. Sorry for any rants.